everybody, and welcome to the return of the show. My name is Abraham, and with me is my co-host, Ben, and today we are talking about the one and only Chainsaw Man, Episode 3.
We're going vrooming on those chainsaws.
Not only are we going to be vrooming the chainsaws, we're also going to be vrooming on some of the people who are returning viewers who aren't subscribed to the channel. So if you are one of those people who is not subscribed, do it, or may Pochita have mercy on your soul.
I will personally find a chainsaw and go to every single person's house who has watched this and has watched our content previously, but is still not subscribed. And there's quite frankly a lot of you.
Yeah, there's a lot of you, so do it or else. But anyways, today we're talking about not just episode 3, which is titled Meowie's Whereabouts. We're also going to be talking about the other episodes prior because we have not been doing it week to week. Our main focus of this video is going to be breaking down and giving an explanation for the magic system on Devils and the implications of it, because that was a big piece of information that was dropped this week. But before we do that, Ben,
yes,
you just caught up on Chainsaw Man. I'd like to know your thoughts on the first 3 episodes.
I did. So first of all, I do think that this show is incredibly fun. Very silly, but unfortunately some of the silliness is also, let's just say it could be problematic, or more accurately is problematic.
What? No way.
No, what am I possibly talking about? Mainly, this show is just very horny.
Aggressively horny.
I am talking like, it is constantly, especially with the opening intro, like, it just randomly goes up to a fucking 11. And it's more kinky than it is horny, I would say. Like, and that's an important distinction to make.
There is puppy play as shown in the trailer and in the second episode.
No, they just love calling Denji a dog and keeping that like very submissive imagery. Okay, so this is where I find things to be problematic. And first of all, I just want to say something to start this off. I am not a woman. So, therefore, some of the context that I have, I can only speak on from the knowledge of being a man. So, I would definitely like to invite any of our woman listeners who also definitely know the context of this and are watching it, and if you know the manga, even better, to just kind of give us some thoughts on this, because I think that this show is doing something different because a lot of times when we talk about sexism in anime, we're talking about the Sakura trope, which previously we have talked about is like kind of dying off, but like this is kind of invocative of the other problem, which is just the sexualization and hypersexualization. But at the same time, this show is doing something different where it's kind of at the forefront of the main character, instead of just being something that's just like, you're watching an anime intro and there's boobs. Oh, there's boobs again. Where this is like, there's an entire scene that's just like, I just want to touch some boobs. I just want to touch some boobs.
It's not just I want to touch some boobs. It is like, it's like the anime, what is my goal scene, except it is to touch boobs.
Yes.
It's almost parody level.
But the issue is that with parody, there has to be obvious intent, and this does not land as parody for me. I will say, there is something about the aloofness and horniness of Denji where, like, I feel like his horniness comes from more of a place of he doesn't even know what sex is. He's just kind of figuring it out. He's like, I didn't even think I would be here this long.
He's literally been living in like a basement, in like an alleyway, in like a little shack for his whole life. So yeah, he doesn't even know what sex. He's never had sex, never had a girlfriend, never had a meal. So there is an innocence to all of it a little bit. And to what you said about it not landing as parody, I don't know. Just because he compared police officers fighting to save their loved ones and fighting in the Call of Duty to him wanting to touch boobs, I think because of how hard they're juxtaposing the dreams of all of these characters, I feel like it was intentional, and I think it did, at least for me, it landed.
Well, no, so here's the thing, is that there's a difference between comedy and parody. So parody has to have an obvious thing that it is juxtaposing to itself.
That's
where
fair.
That is very much just like, I'm watching this show and I'm just like, this man is on a mission and he is so goddamn horny. Which, honestly, I don't think that there's necessarily anything super wrong about that. I do think that it's like, yes, this definitely exists within the genre itself and is problematic on the fact that it's so rampant. And then the fact that in this piece of media that we're seeing it at the forefront kind of makes me do a double take. But where it becomes a little bit more problematic, actually, is with the representation of the woman in the show. So, like, I can talk about the fact that he's horny all I want, and there's nothing that really comes up as being a problem with this. But then we are talking about a character who is essentially discovering the opposite sex for the first time. He's discovering women as people that just he has not had in his life at all. And to have the first woman that he ever interacts with essentially just be like the most dominant person ever, and having them like immediately objectify him in a way that I was not anticipating is kind of where the weirdness starts coming in, because there is a change in power dynamic that you would not have seen in previous animes. Previous animes really love to show women as being extremely submissive, and this is not doing that.
And we're gonna have to circle back around the whole, because there are other female characters that we do have to talk about in relation to the Devil Hunter Association. Makima is a big point that we'll circle back to later. I don't know. I feel like because they know the genre and because I know the genre and we know the genre, this is, like you said, making us do a double take a little bit more.
Yeah.
Which is why my guard's not immediately up, because they're being so vocal with this.
I also want to say, I am more or less just confused on how to feel on this. I do not think that I have enough information to make a like, this is a sexist show. But I do think that it is leaning in a direction where I'm like, I could make the argument for this, and I could also make the argument against it at the same time. I know that there's going to be another really good spot for us to talk about this, so I do want to save it for then.
Yes, and one more thing before we jump in. Ben and I are not manga readers. We have not seen or read the manga. We are going into this blind. And it's with that we kind of want to discuss this first big piece of information that was dropped in episode 3, and it is the magic of the devils. So, for those of you who were not privy to this, for those of you who are not privy to this information, after watching episode 3, here is basically what Makima breaks down in the car ride in one scene. Essentially, there is a devil for seemingly any inanimate object or concept, potentially. She goes on to explain that a coffee devil is not going to be powerful because it is not feared, whereas a car devil might. And that is because all devils get their power from the fear of humans. The more that they are feared, the more powerful they will become. Additionally, we were already kind of getting some information before where devils are able to get more powerful by drinking blood. And we also were given information about devils being able to inhabit human bodies and become fiends, where they take on the characteristics of the devil that's inhabiting them. So we saw the little Cthulhu man, and Power is another example. Her horns are, I guess, a symbol of the blood devil that's inhabiting this seemingly lifeless corpse that is Power.
So they did make it pretty explicit. The one thing that gives away what a fiend is their head appearance. Not just their physical appearance, but specifically their head, which is where things kind of become interesting, because like we see that when Denji is in his devil form, it is specifically his head that is turning into this. So he's kind of like a fiend, but the other way around.
Yeah, well, it's also coming out of his hands too. The chains coming out in between his fingers, the pull cord that's coming out of his chest. He is definitely a hybrid between he's not quite a fiend. It's something that was actually explained in the previous episode.
Which is why they are taking so much interest in him. And honestly, it has really big implications for the rest of the show going on. But first, I want to back it up to one thing. So they explicitly are just like, if a devil is something that's really strong and feared by many people, then they would be powerful. And like the specific example that they gave was a car devil. And it's like, I can easily imagine being killed by a car. Therefore, the car devil is going to be very, very scary and very dangerous. So what does that say about Pochita?
That's kind of the one question that arises. And it's not just like, what about Pochita? It's like, what even is he? Because, yes, he's the chainsaw devil, but, you know.
He's so cute.
Yeah, why? I mean, chainsaws are pretty scary. Why is this little chainsaw? I mean, he was injured in episode 1.
He was. But at the same time, yeah, why is he so goddamn cute? Also, I need to get something out of the way. Will he be back? I am so sad that he died on the first episode. He's too fucking cute. I need more of Pochita. I'm upset.
I'm really shocked because I was actually talking to some friends about this, and they were kind of going on about how, yeah, Pochita might like live on like a Force ghost. Like maybe he'll be able to talk to him every now and again. But we're 3 episodes in. He's gone.
Yeah.
Where is he? Where's the little doggy?
So I have heard actually that in the manga he's kind of like a mascot for the meta, or more accurately like the narration. So like every manga page that you open up, he's supposedly like on the cover doing something cute, or like showing up to like give an announcement about the real world or something with the speech bubble. Like,
yeah, but we don't get that. We're just
No, we don't get to see him all the time.
I would be shocked if we don't get to see him again before the end of the series. Before the end of the season, I mean, it would be ballsy.
I think the show's pretty good so far, and they actually are playing off of the aspect of his death really well from a storytelling aspect, which is, I mean, obviously, this manga has had a massive following for a reason. The story and the art are incredibly good. Now, again, will the cuteness of having him as a mascot translate to the anime? No. Do I wish that they had come up with some other way for us to interact with him regularly in the anime? Yes.
I'm kind of in that same boat. Though I will commend them if they just decide to keep him locked away until the finale of the show or something like that. But regardless, kind of back to the conversation of what is Pochita, and also just the implications for this episode and the magic system reveal. There's also another line about the use of devils by use of other international superpowers,
yes,
namely the United States.
United States and Russia were the two that were named.
Makima's giving like a talk to a group of suits that I guess work at the Devil Hunter Association, and she's like, yeah, they could be using this. Hopefully they're not going to use them for military purposes. Which is just super scary already off the rip.
There's a lot of implications here about like how that could happen. Like Denji's one of the only people that we have seen even with the concept of taming a devil, let alone becoming one, which I'd imagine is the reason why Makima is like, I have to keep an eye on this guy, because if this is successful, then like we have a case of super soldiers right here.
It's also something to point out that we haven't really seen. We've seen Power fight. Obviously, like she's a fiend, so she would naturally be powerful. But this other character who we saw last episode, who was kicked repeatedly in the balls, I forget his name off the top of my head, but he's seemingly a member of the organization. He carries a katana. I would imagine he'd be able to fight. So I am curious how the people who are not infused with devil power, how they're able to fight in this devil association, if they even can.
This is kind of the interesting thing, is like we know that the Devil Hunters Association with Makima, they formed this as an experimental unit. And we clearly have a fiend and whatever the fuck Denji is. So odds are, if we're talking about the use for international warfare, like we can see 2 case studies right here. If Denji's not the only thing like Denji, then that means that other countries have probably figured out how to develop super soldiers, or they have figured out how to do what they have done with Power and tame or ally themselves with fiends so that they can kind of just like exist within human society, be able to like slip into another country and then be super soldiers, essentially. Now, how that's going to work is a different story, because I feel like we've been pretty established that devils and humans do not get along well. Again, with the exception of like Denji.
See, that's the thing. I am curious about that because if Denji's able to work with Pochita, it would follow suit that other devils that are lesser, that maybe aren't like what's this? What would be a scary devil? Like the terrorism devil. I don't know. No.
The gun devil. That's an easy one.
Gun devil, sure. Maybe there are lesser devils that could potentially like be called on, like maybe it's like a Pokemon rules kind of situation. Like maybe are they making deals with devils to like call on their power? Is it that kind of deal, or are they just like, I'm a great warrior, I can just fight them without any powers? I'm just curious to see how that will play out in the next episode, because this Bat Devil's taken care of seemingly, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I wonder what's going to happen when the rest of the group joins the fray, if they report back to HQ, if there's more missions. I don't know.
I mean, we're going to see more of the Devil Hunter Association, obviously. Clearly, power is a big part of the story, and she's not dead. Maybe her cat is, but I feel like that would be ballsy of the artist and the anime to be like, and the cat's also dead, because you haven't killed enough pets.
They already did it once.
Yep. I know the cat's totally on the table, but like I'm holding out hope. But regardless, the full element of this, I feel like Denji is not going to be the only person that is like this. We're going to see fiends being weaponized by, if not the Devil Hunter Association, when the other military powers that have now been introduced as a Chekhov's gun, mind you, the second that they were introduced, we know we're going to see them in the story later down the line. We're going to see weaponized devils. We're going to see human versus human interests that are wielding these powers in some way. Now, again, if there's other Denjis or if it's just other powers remains to be seen. But I imagine by the lengths of the story, by the time everything's done, there will be both. Now, as for the Devil Hunter Association itself, I'm really curious about specifically one character, and that's Makima.
Yes.
Because her eyes, that is not an accidental character design choice, especially when you take a look at Power's eyes.
Makima's all around. I get weird vibes. I get very, very, very weird and off-putting vibes from Makima, not just for the eyes, but just her ability to exert power, not just on Denji, but also power as well. Because in this episode, in the beginning, just as she's able to, like a dog, like beck and call Denji, she's able to rein in power.
Another thing that really stuck out to me as being a potential commentary on this is she also seems to have a really big leash on, I'm forgetting him because he's been so far very insignificant. We've only seen him in one episode. The guy who's been kicked in the nuts multiple times.
Guy who's been kicked in the nuts.
That is his character name. I know he will become very important. They just haven't given him the screen time, and so far he's just been kicked in the balls. So that's his name until he proves otherwise. That being said, he stated that, no, she's a good person and had saved him beforehand. So all of the characters are kind of having this, for lack of a better term, the only reason why I'm saying this is because they keep the imagery so hard. They all seem to be somewhat dominated by Makima. And I'm using that word very particularly because of the imagery and because that's kind of the vibe that you get off her character, that's her whole thing. She controls other people at all cost. But also, it comes very naturally to her. And I kind of, my hypothesis is that she is a fiend, or she is the same thing as Denji and just hasn't told anyone.
I mean, it's possible. I mean, you were saying the same thing about the eye, like not the eyes, that the head of a devil or the head of a fiend is changed and altered based on the person who's inhabiting it. Power has both the eyes and horns, and they are calling so much attention to her eyes. They also look like targets, like bullseyes, kind of like spirals. So I definitely see that as being a possibility. If she's a villain, I don't know.
I don't think she.
Yeah, because like what you were saying about, by the way, his name was Aki, the guy who's
Aki,
been kicked in the
thank you.
balls. Yeah, that's his name. Don't worry, I looked it up on Google while you were talking. But anyways, as Aki says, Makima is a good person, so this could be. I mean, I don't know if I'd go so far as to say an Itachi situation where like they are doing bad things for good reasons, kind of deal. Maybe they're just shady undertones, but it's actually like for a really, really important reason. Maybe maybe this is just a red herring and they're just a good guy and they just seem creepy. That could also be on the table.
No, I mean, like, I have to see. My opinion of the show actually will be very dependent on Makima's character regarding how I feel about its treatment of women as a whole, but also like the overall horniness of it. I think that she will at least serve a minor antagonistic role for a little bit. That will not make her necessarily the villain, though. I actually think that she probably has everyone's better interest. They're setting her up actually to have conflict about being attached to both Denji and Power, though. It's very explicitly stated that, like, hey, don't you like get attached to these guys that are in this unit because like they might not work out, and when that happens we gotta kill them. And she's like, oh yeah, of course. But again, we're now seeing a Chekhov's gun type thing. Is like, okay, this potential for conflict has now been introduced, so therefore this character will have to deal with potentially that conflict at some point. So she will have to make a choice at some point about whether or not to keep these guys alive, and it's going to be at least difficult for her. And they did a really specific line about how Power's horns are too noticeable, which does imply that potentially other fiends...
not noticeable ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because if other fiends can fully blend into society, take over a human, and then they like don't make too much alteration, then of course you could easily have this situation. Now, again, it's been 3 episodes, and the second episode was mostly very goofy. The third episode has actually given us something as far as plot and magic system and world building is concerned. So we will see.
I did kind of want to talk a little bit about the power dynamics at stake, a little bit more between all of the characters and that control that you were saying that Makima was exuding on kind of all of the characters. I wouldn't say it's overt, and it's not necessarily manipulation.
I mean, it's manipulation in the fact that like if you don't do it, I'll kill you. But it's not it. But you're right. It's not
malicious.
Yeah. I will say one of the first things that I heard about being a potential theme within this show was the idea of an abusive relationship. We're going into that. One of my like main gripes about this is, again, like earlier on, I was like, I don't know how to feel about the show because all the women have been extremely dominant, which we're not used to. And honestly, I feel like that's more attributed to how horny and kinky this show is. Because like, again, there's dog play. He's constantly being called a dog. They're constantly comparing him to a dog. And like, she's like, you need a woof for me. And it's okay. Yeah. But the thing is like, it's only really the women in the show that are being constantly sexualized. And not only that, if they are in a position to be constantly antagonistic, or like if we're constantly calling into question the morality of all of the women in the show in particular, then that's where my problems are going to start arising. And that's kind of the reason why Makima's character, the direction that she turns, is going to be so crucial to what I think about the show overall. Because if it turns out that she has very legitimate reasons for doing what she's doing, and she's just also kinky, then great. And if she turns out to be a good person, then great. But also, like, this is where things get a little weird as far as, like, when you're talking about kink and, like, dominant and submissive, is the thing is, like, I don't think this show actually does a great job of showing what that actually looks like in a character, because she's technically in charge all the time. You wouldn't usually see a character that like is dominant, but also is like dominant in what is very obviously a sexual way. Like normally there is a duality in that, but we're not really getting that. And then Denji is like, this is he is the most submissive human being in existence. He does anything for anyone as long as there is some sort of sexual favor at the end of it.
Yeah, it's not only going to be, up to Makima, it's also going to be about power as well, because whereas Makima is this sort of, I would say like an idealized like fantasy version of a woman that he's attracted to. Like he puts her up on a pedestal. He's like, yes, mommy, anything for me, anything for you, mommy. Like that is who Denji is as a person. Whereas with power, there seems to be like almost a transactional relationship, and where that can sort of be problematic right now because of how this last episode ended. I have hopes for how it could evolve if they actually like do this in the correct way. Because again, as you were saying earlier in the episode, Denji's relationship with women is non-existent. It's because he's lived a sheltered life. He has been pretty much physically and like mentally abused all of his life. He's never known anything other than fighting to survive. So if they can use power as a way to self-actualize like his own worldview, as well as, Denji doing the same thing for power, that sort of transaction where the two of them are sort of learning from each other, because, the ending of this episode, they are having a sort of back and forth about how power now understands Denji and how he feels about the loss of Pochita. And, Denji, uttered those feelings as well in a scene halfway through the episode.
Yeah.
So if they are able to catapult this seemingly very crude and horny character into one that is actually like reflective and is going, like, I don't know, like, hey, maybe women have feelings too.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just kind of cool.
Maybe women aren't just sex objects, which I will. So I'll agree with you. I think that is actually the way that this story could go that will deal with all these things, because I also found myself going like, I kind of ship them.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of really good elements from how these characters can interact. And sure, they don't like each other right now, but like throughout the course of this episode, they are coming to understand each other, and they have a lot more in common than they realize.
Yes, they do. Like they like the fact that they were both so dirty and filthy, like in their like pre Devil Hunter Association phase of their life, like before, before Power was with Makima, she was just naked, running around dirty, killing animals, and just going feral. Same thing with with Denji. He was just living and serving this mob boss.
No, they are really good foils to each other, and the show knows what it's doing. It knows that they're foils, and it definitely wants us to come up with this ship. It wants us to compare them and go, they can learn a lot from each other. Now, that being said, like, I do think that some of the transactional relationship between Power and Denji, first of all, is hysterical. It's one of the funniest things that I've ever seen. The whole like, if you help me get my cat back, I can let you touch my boob. And of course, Power doesn't have any idea of like the richer implications of that. Like, she's just like, I'm a devil. I don't really understand what's going on in these human bodies, but like, fine, if that's what it takes to get my cat, I'll do it. So like, obviously feeling like no feelings are reciprocated in that. However, it is consensual, which is important. That being said, like, I kind of see Power as being, like, she is sexualized, but she is not done in the same sort of dominant, submissive relationship that Denji is having with Makima. And there is an angle for this to go where it will show Makima as potentially an abuser. And that being said, they will be coding domination with abuse, which I don't know how I feel about.
Again, I don't think that because I think power will be as equally dominant.
No, I don't think power is a dom. I do not.
I'm sorry. You really looked at the woman who said the game is afoot. I can smell blood. Ramsacked. What is it called? A devil with her hammer tricked this dude into giving his body to a bat devil. Like,
how much am I going to reveal about myself right now?
Oh God. Okay.
How do I say this? Power is, if anything, a brat. I don't know if you know what that is.
Yes, I know what a brat is.
Okay,
I'm aware.
Great.
But I think I still stand by what I'm saying. I still think Denji is too much of a bottom to even
he can't even climb that mountain.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't matter who he's with. He's always getting topped. Even with Aki, even with power, with Makima, with his boss, with like every relationship that this man has ever had, he is not the one in control.
No, you're right about that.
I do think that, and yeah, like power might not like be as dominant as Makima is, and I'm obviously not saying just from a sexual point of view. I just mean in terms of dynamics.
In terms of dynamic, no, she would be the one in control, which however, the only issue is that the show has immediately, the writer very clearly knows what kink is. Very clearly knows what BDSM is, and is coding these characters as such. So it is suddenly, I never thought I'd say this, kink is suddenly a valid lens to look at these characters through.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I never thought that it would come to that. But here we are.
It just depends on how they're going to write that relationship. Really, I'm just curious to see how Power's going to react once she gets ripped out of the Bat Devil's stomach. If that deal is still going to be on the table. Is he going to... how would...
I think Denji's going to get to touch some boobs. I do think good for him. I think he's going to get to touch some boobs.
But if he does that, what happens next? Character arc over? He's done?
I don't think character arc's over. I think that Denji is a person who has never even conceptualized himself having sex. And if you've noticed, episode 1, he just wanted a hug. Episode 2, he said, I want to touch some boobs. Episode 3, he is on the mission to touch some boobs. Once he's done touching boobs, he's going to be like, what's next for me? Because I suddenly reached the end of the line. Maybe I want to do something more than touching boobs. That's the level that he's going at, because this is a man who has never conceptualized himself living this long. And he's just like, wow, touching boobs seems like the biggest deal in the world, because for him it is. And he's going to quickly realize that's not fulfilling. So he's going to look for the next hole to fill in his soul. Yeah. That came out. Yep. I'm so sorry. That's not what I meant. That came out
very wrong. I'm just going to steamroll that and just say, I love the idea of Denji touching boobs and then going, well, that was underwhelming. It could very well be played like that. Who knows? Again, only 3 episodes in, and we've already got this much to talk about as far as devils and power dynamics and the magic system and Makima. But hey, we'll have to wait and see. Join us next week for our next episode of The Return of the Show. We'll be answering the age-old question: who's the top? Who's the bottom? And hey, it's The Return of the Show.